To the folks on the phone, we're just waiting for the administration to attend, so we'll get started when they get here. Welcome. I don't do that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Today is Friday, November 14th. This is a work session on the legislative program. I have an item number for it yet. We will soon. We're on the calendar from 10:40 to 11:40. Today, it's 10:46 now. We'll start with introductions. Ms. Baldwin Day.
Aaron Baldwin Day.
Jared Gerker. Scott Meyer.
Christopher Constant on the phone. Ms. Silvers. Are you there, Ms. Silvers? Mr. Martinez?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Martinez, are you there?
Yes, present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Thanks. And we're joined by our legislative services staff. Also, Mr. Gates, Mr. Hart from the legal clerk's office, and Mr. Cloud from the administration. Mr. Cloud, take us away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Nolan Clouda with the Mayor's Office. So what you all have in front of you is the draft 2026 legislative program. This has been gone through with the legislative committee and drafted by folks in the administration, including myself, and put out for your consideration as a body. If you'd like, Mr. Chair, I can walk you through the program and what we have in here. We took the approach of keeping the program fairly lean, and there's always a different kind of approach that you can take philosophically, what to include, what not to include. There are, of course, more desirable legislative changes that might be requested that we didn't put in our program. But what we have is that it is kept it focused on items that are of that are very direct municipal interests, and starting with the Port of Alaska. So our top request is for funding for port modernization. And this is obviously not, this is a perennial topic and something that matters a lot to us by keeping those surcharges from being too high, so that they don't impact consumers in Anchorage and around the state as much as we can. So that's the top of it. We know that the context for any asking for funding for the state right now is going to be very lean. We're hearing very large numbers about what this projected state deficit is going to be, in the 1.4, 1.5 billion range. I'm hearing. So capital asks may not be super fruitful, but nonetheless, we do think it's important to try. And also, if there's any possibility of a general obligation bond, we want to be included in that. So you'll see that there's a request for $200 million of state investment in the PAMP. The other three outside of the port, there's sort of three main themes that we grouped all of our asks into: safe, secure, and affordable. And so safe is referring, to community safety, public safety, and we have the asks that we have there. One is for the APD Real-Time Crime Center for a capital request, $1.5 million. We put in some blight reduction funding, nuisance abatement funding. There's the existing efforts that Development Services has. This would be something that would top up that to allow for demolition of dangerous properties that are not able to be rehabilitated. We lumped our ask for the community assistance program, the annual, used to be revenue sharing, that we put that as a public safety request just because that's so much of what our budget consists of. And also an ask to do an inflation adjustment to the E911 surcharge, which helps cover dispatching and public safety related costs closely connected to that. I'll pause there for a moment, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions or anything that.
Anyone on the phone? I have one concern, just under the safe section. Priorities, right? Let's invest $1.5 million into this vast real-time crime center so we can continue monitoring everybody, but only $500,000 request into actually reducing the things that create the criminal activity and promote an environment in which people are kind of more apt to commit crimes because they're suffering. They're in a neighborhood that's terrible. They're, vagrancy, drug use, nefarious activity happens in blight. And so there's definitely, in my opinion, kind of a reversal of where the priorities ought to be. But this is your first approach. So if I were in charge, I would split them, I would flip them, I would do something to mitigate the issues that create crime instead of spending all the time and resources on just standing up more tools to capture people when we have an environment built for struggle, vulnerability. So anyone else? All right, you want to move on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do understand where you're coming from on that comment. The next section, secure, and how is secure different from safe? So secure is where we're talking about resilience and our infrastructure predominantly, and so we have this one includes a budget request for $250,000 for Chugach State Park access study. It includes some another item to increase rates for general relief for assisted living, and this is one where Thea Agnew-Bembin in the mayor's office is a lot more knowledge about this subject. But general relief assistance is a program that's available for people that don't, as I understand it, don't qualify for Medicaid, that slip through the cracks for various reasons. We have in our shelter system a large number of people who have disabilities or complex needs, and that really should be in some form of an assisted living center, but that aren't able to be there with the support of general relief as it exists now. And so this would be something that would modify that so that folks in that situation could be in an environment that's probably better for them than in a shelter. Next one is amending statutes concerning the utility rate setting. This is an AWU item predominantly that changes how some of their rates are set, allowing them to recoup certain costs for their vertical plant, for the treatment centers and for treatment facilities and other kinds of operations like that. That the bottom line with it, the sort of punchline is that it would help enable more housing development, more of that funding of infrastructure for housing development that we think is important. A couple of other administrative actions here. This is about prioritizing winter maintenance coordination, because of course we have our state-owned roads and snow removal, as well as other maintenance considerations, and then the full staffing of the Alaska, DOT, the central region, so that we can make more of our priorities with regard to Vision Zero and maintenance as well. And if there's anything, I'm happy to pause there.
Ms. Baldwin-Day.
Yeah, I'm curious about the Chugach State Park access study as the standalone budget request, and how that falls into the bucket of essential systems.
Through the chair, Member Baldwin-Day, we were lumping it into as an infrastructure request. The labeling of the categories is not necessarily a perfect thing. And I understand that there's something more to facilitate, recreation, but it is important to a lot of Anchorage residents. And so we thought worth including there. And it's something that takes a bigger picture view of Chugach access to recommend optimized, how we approach the issue of access points for Chugach State Park.
Were there any other budget requests that were contemplated apart from just this one?
Through the chair, Member Baldwin-Day, off the top of my head, I don't recall that we did receive. I don't recall talking about other kinds of budget requests here that didn't go in, and I'm not. It may just be that I'm not remembering, but and nor in our committee discussions or other conversations with members.
Yeah, I think it's not immediately clear to me how Chugach State Park access relates to resilience and secure infrastructure when we have so many other unfunded needs in the infrastructure bucket. Yeah, I guess I'm struggling to understand the prioritization of that particular project as it pertains to creating a more secure Anchorage. Not that it isn't important, but as far as like a legislative ask related to infrastructure and resilience, that doesn't, it seems a little odd that that's the thing that rose to the top of the priority list. So I would, if there were other things contemplated, I'd love to know about them and understand why this was selected over other choices.
Through the chair, I think a couple things to keep in mind with it, of course, is that we did want, members, of course, as part of this process, select many of their own particular requests for capital funding, especially, and so there's always that piece open for capital requests. Also, CASA is an area where we foresee future municipal investment, or we've had our bonds questions and on that, and so this we wouldn't be able to bond a study, so it's something where it would help guide some of our future investments in that area. So it's not to diminish the importance of any other asks that are out there. It's also an area where kind of state municipality have strong intersections. So it made sense to think about the state having a stake in it. It's not that there aren't many important things or really good things that aren't included in here. It's also that we're kind of thinking about, strategically what we can position for a state ask.
All right, so I have Zach in the queue. Mr. Johnson. And myself after.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to wait until after Mr. Cloud is done with his presentation.
Okay, and I'll just offer two things on the comments I think Ms. Baldwin made that I kind of understand. I might have a slightly different perspective. I think it is weird or odd that it's the only request under the secure rubric for infrastructure. And for all the conversations that are happening in relationship to the Chugach State Park, and really it's the urban wildland interface that is contemplated there. And it's the Firewise piece. And it seems like if we are working to set up and establish a strong Firewise kind of program where we're funding fully the engagement of the fire department to have their wildland firefighting crews prepared for a major urban wildfire incident, that you might want to also include something along those lines, that we get the state hooked in, because if we want to talk about securing our infrastructure and we want to talk about the hillside piece and even other parts of town, it's like we need to make sure that's really, really strong. And so I might suggest adding that. I do recommend finding a category, if this isn't it, for securing funds for the Chugach Access Study, because the study will actually provide data that is very valuable for us to set out a meaningful improvement plan that meets the needs and not just the wants of the folks who are involved. And so I am supportive of this concept. I look forward to seeing it, but I would offer that the most pressing issue is not that, it's the fire, in my opinion. So just to add what Ms. Baldwin Day said. You want to proceed if there's no one else? Questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the last category, the affordable bucket, which is fairly self-explanatory, and what we have in there is one is the waste to energy project, about $2 million request. This is something where we have an application into the Renewable Energy Fund with the state, and the legislature, gets those scored applications and then decides how much to appropriate, how many of them to fund. And so we want to have an ask to support that. The funding would be for some of the pre-development work to inform some of the technical specs, but also site location, compliance standards, stakeholder engagement. So something that helps get that project going. And then we included some weatherization funding as a request. Likely it would go through AHFC, but something that would help with home energy efficiency and residential weatherization. This one is being targeted at mobile homes. We thought was a good target for that. And then other changes here is for attainable housing, developing new mechanisms either through ADA or through AHFC to help finance housing development. So which is kind of a perennial ask. Lots of different ways that it can be approached, but one that we thought was important there. And then that wraps up
I would note that we had our retreat yesterday, and I think there was a common thread about trying to figure out a way to get ADA to be a stronger partner. So I think we have unanimity there.
Very good. That wraps up the main components of it. The final piece is the district priorities in the back, which I think Legislative Services has been kind of taking the rein on.
I know we've been quiet from North Anchorage, but that bridge, the stairs, I think is the one project we want to start with.
Oh, rebuilding them on.
Yeah, from the Chester Creek Trail up to L Street or wherever it is. That's the North Anchorage one. I don't know if there are others, but okay, Zach, the presentation is done. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So appreciate Mr. Clauda providing an overview of the program. I just first want to highlight for members a couple things that were prominent in last year's program that didn't carry over to this year as it exists currently. And two of our top line items that we had in the 2025 program that you don't see here in this current iteration is one, restoration of a defined benefit program. And then two, also a request specific to education or school funding. On the education front, I'd be curious to hear members' thoughts on this. The Anchorage School District has already put together their version of their legislative program. And the big categories that they are requesting legislators to look at are restoration of education's purchasing power, competitive retirement options, and full reimbursement for student transportation. Of course, we always have the option to come up with our own priorities or simply to leave education out of the program entirely. Also note that on the wildfire front, which I do believe would be valuable to include in this year's program, last year we had from the fire department request of $200,000 to stand up a unmanned aerial surveillance program, a pilot program. Well, I think there's some overlap with APD's efforts. This would be a distinct piece of equipment. And the ask was for this money to cover the upfront cost of getting the program going, but then I believe the expectation is APD would be able to cover the operational cost going forward. And while the drone would serve multiple functions, the primary utility of it would be related to early wildfire detection, which of course we know that the sooner you can get on a fire, the sooner you can respond, the better your chances of success are. But it'll also be useful per AFD for things like search and rescue, hazmat response, and post-incident assessments. So that was in the 2025 program. It's not in the 2026 program, but as I'm hearing members suggest interest in having something relevant to wildfire, that's one AFD has recognized. And I think there's value as well in recognizing not just the things that we hope to attain in any given year, but the value of consistency and saying that these have been perennial asks of the legislature. And so we hope that they, even if they don't necessarily receive funds in a given year, they understand our themes that remain relevant to Anchorage. So yeah, I'll just start by pointing out those handful of items, and again, curious to hear my colleagues' thoughts.
I don't see anyone in the queue. I'll offer that I would love to hear from the administration the rationale for removal of the restoration of defined benefits. It's been a part of the program since 2018.
For the record, Suzanne Flick-Green, Chief of Staff to the Mayor. I can answer that through the chair. I think when we approached it this year, given the clear signal from legislators, the inability to find funding for most things, we know that, I mean, the mayor supports that, as she does the education funding. But for this legislative program, how we really focus on the things that are going to help the municipal operations and the priorities set by the assembly and the mayor in terms of both capital and operational support.
I would offer that it might be a better approach than eliminating it is to find some way to speak to it in that way, maintaining it in there that says this continues to be a priority, but we have to focus on where we find, I don't know how you would message that, but it has literally been a continuing plank, and I would not want to have a conversation on the dais about including it if we could just get something in there that reflects the position of the administration that, look, we can't take on everything, but this still maintains a position in our effort to whatever, however you can message it to achieve something, to not let it drop off. Because I have a feeling that will be a subject of amendment if there's not something there. But you could probably lead on that. So just a thought. Ms. Baldwin-Day.
Yeah, I mean, recognizing that this is my first time around with the legislative program or considering a legislative program. I mean, it makes sense that our biggest financial request, single financial request related to operations would be port modernization. But in every other section, we have requests for statutory changes and administrative actions. And I think that, I mean, as I listen to constituents and as I talk to some of our, police and fire and educators, that the restoration of defined benefits is such a critical issue for workforce retention that it's difficult to imagine that we would not at least note that in our legislative program, that it would be the impacts to Anchorage are extraordinary when it comes to defined benefits and also education funding. I mean, we are, and this is top of mind at every community council meeting. I mean, we're looking at a $70 million shortfall next year for ASD. And so to not note that as this is a massive need that Anchorage has for the state to create a plan, some sort of articulation of that feels really critical, even if there's not a dollar sign attached to it, just to say, these are impacts that Anchorage is feeling. Like, we as the leadership of the municipality affirm that this is a critical need. And again, as the chair said, not sure how exactly that gets messaged, but to omit that feels like only telling part of the story in the legislative program.
Again, through the chair, we will take that into consideration. I feel like I'll just say, if I go into the Wayback Machine, not the way back, but the semi way back, We did used to have a legislative program that was nuts and bolts municipal operations. So I understand that this is something that the administration and the assembly have put in the more recent years, but it's a different way to approach it, and we will take that into consideration. And I think there are many, many advocates on both of those issues. So,
Yeah,
and the mayor can lend her voice to both of them.
and I'm certain there's some savvy writer up on the 8th floor that can thread that needle in a way that, because I understand your perspective and or why, and I don't disagree with it. Yeah. Okay, anyone else on those questions? Jared, Ms. Kirker?
So I actually appreciate it's not including the defined benefits ask, and I just wanted to share that with you. We are facing some pretty significant financial hurdles. Defined benefits is a very expensive plan and proposition. So I appreciate just being realistic in this and actually not including that for what that's worth.
Others? Anyone else on the legislative program? Dean? Mr. Gates?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to offer one suggestion and one comment. And I think that just as a lawyer, when I see these requests for statutory changes, it's helpful to have the statute cited, the E911 surcharge, it's an AS 2935, some section. So I just think it would be helpful to have that, cite in each of these statutory changes. We're looking for it to be changed. After all, they amend the specific sections. And then I guess I wondered, for the Chugach State Park access study, there was the state did a Chugach access plan. It's in 2010. I assume that legislators are going to be informed about that. And I guess I just wonder, what's the response when they say, why isn't that good enough? Is it too old or stale? Anyway, that's not something that changed, but I just noted that there's something not that old, at least from my perspective, that did what this is asking to do.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the last thing I want to point to members towards, and again, receive some feedback on, is the district priorities, which has been perennially included in the program. Last year, we had each district submit could people turn off their mics? Thank you. So last year, members submitted 4 to 6 projects. We requested that for this year, they limited to not more than 2. Now, Ms. Santa Clausen sent out a request that people submit their priorities for their districts. I think she has to have them around Wednesday of this week, and so far has only received response from 1 district. So I guess I would be curious to hear from members, is this something that we want to continue to include in the program? In which case, if it is, I think we need to understand and then set a deadline that is feasible for our staff to format and include it in the draft. And if it's not something that we think that necessarily needs to be in the program, to hear that feedback from members here, hopefully. Of course, for context, members always have the opportunity to work directly with the legislators in their district to go over priorities or to advocate for projects. So again, it's not something that necessarily needs to be included formally in our legislative program, although it is nice to have it as a reference. Also say, as part of the, perhaps broader context for this conversation, from a design perspective, we have the option to either go with a 4 or an 8-page program. The last few have been 8 pages, and while it gives it more space to lay out our wants and the arguments for them, I think some of the feedback we kind of got from legislators is that when it's that long, it kind of turns into a TLDR sort of document. So in looking at this 4-page lean program that we have, unless we want to make a significant change to essentially double the length of it, as we're contemplating adding things in, there would be a need to either compress things, take things out, or make other changes to make things fit. I think just for way of example, if you can imagine, if we added 3 or 4 new paragraphs into really the couple of pages that we have set aside for priorities, it would make it tough from a formatting perspective for Ms. Hartman to make it fit. So anyways, with that, I guess I'd just kind of be curious to hear from people. Is district priorities something that we want to continue to include in the program? And with that, let members know that if we don't actually have those submitted by a reasonable time, there may be a couple districts that just stay blank, or we have to put some sort of placeholder in there. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Aaron?
Yeah, so given that we have received indication from legislators that a skinnier ask is preferable, does it make sense from the administration's perspective to include district priorities at all, or is that sort of taking the temperature, right? If we haven't had a robust response from districts and there's already been some effort made to narrow our scope of requests.
Through the chair, Suzanne Flake Green, I think we are happy to defer to the legislative branch on that, however you want to handle it. I would recommend that you do put some projects in, because you never know when a capital budget might open up. And probably your legislators that represent your districts are going to want to have a piece of paper that they can quickly grab and see what you're asking for. So if you want capital money, I would recommend you put something in.
You know, there's conversations about looking at the CIP, and if you don't have identified priorities, picking projects in the CIP that are already identified is not a bad idea, and that members can do that. And so best for members to put something forward, that way it has that support at least. So I would offer, don't waste the opportunity. Good question. First, I have Ms.
Mr.
Silvers in
Chair,
the queue. Go ahead.
if I may,
Yeah,
sorry
go ahead.
to interrupt. I will say that early on in our discussion as we were developing this, that your staff strongly recommended that you take things off of it.
Off the CIP. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, things that have been kind of programmed and approved. And so, yeah, is that what you were gonna say, Claire? Wait, let's let Ms. Silvers go first. She was in the queue. Yarrow.
Yeah, our district did send in some priorities, but quite honestly, they're very basic things, very basic needs. We asked for pedestrian safety and some infrastructure needs, because we kind of feel like really even, the basics, we need help with more than we're getting. But in a way, it did kind of feel like just going through the motions, because we know that in the past, I don't believe that these district priorities have been fulfilled. And so I going back to Aaron, Member Baldwin Day's question, I don't know if it's kind of worth going through those motions or not. So I could go either way with it, although we did submit something.
Okay, now, Claire, Ms. Ross.
Okay, my broken record speech. You need to, if you put a request in here, it needs to be in the CIP, because municipal staff, there's a thing called CAPSIS, which is the database that the state uses for all of the funding requests. And if it's not in CAPSIS, they can't put it in the budget. And our municipal staff puts everything in the CIB into CAPSIS. So if your project isn't in there, it might be on this paper, but it's not actually fundable. It's I don't know, avoided checker. I don't know the right analogy. So you are doing the budget on Tuesday and can make CIP amendments. So I would just recommend that if you do put something in here that's not in the CIP, that you do a CIP and CIB budget amendment to have something in the state funding line for it. 2 years ago, there were some projects from this list funded, and I think it's because a legislator had a bargaining chip for a vote on another item, and they traded it to get some capital projects in their district. So I think it's not in vain, and I think the projects that East Anchorage submitted are probably the type of stuff that would get funded if someone needs to trade a vote for a 500,000, $1 million capital budget item.
Scott.
I just have a technical question then, Claire. It's been on there for our District 2s to replace that stupid split rail fence, but it's technically a state road. So, and I blow up Kelly and Jamie and Dan all the time, and they know. And then the other one is the Chugach Senior Center replacement generator, and part of that is a HUD building, so that would come from federal dollars. So I'm not sure.
If Jared agrees, moving forward, get him on there and do it.
Jared has to recuse himself from that one.
Oh, the senior center one, that's fine, but yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, so, but the point is get on the list.
Yeah, last year we did have, I think almost every district had something that they wanted the state to do, but they didn't. So I think putting it in here and doing what you've been doing and just talking about it relentlessly with your state and DOT is the best you can do.
Yeah, I would push back a little bit, Claire, on the CIP needs to be on there. Otherwise it doesn't get that box check that says been through a public process. I think that this is a formal public process and it just would require more work on our part to enter the document in CAPSIS. And so it's better to have it in the CIP, but if there's something extraordinary that comes out of the deal, the work can be done. It's just better to run through the department.
I don't think it's so much the public process, because a lot of your projects that aren't in the CIP that you come up with have been through a public process. It's just logistical. So you're right. If it's not in the CIP, you can work with your legislator to get it added to CAPSIS, but then it's on you to do it. No one at Muni staff will
They
be working
can.
on it.
No, they can. We could get a link sent to us. That's procedurally, we could ask for access to the CAPSIS system and do that whole process ourselves. And so it's not ideal. The ideal way to do it is through the departments because they're the administrators, but we could. So yeah, I just know how flexible that system can be. It just puts burden onto a limited staff that we have. So yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We're not checking. We're only
Yeah.
Our staff is only entering in to CAPSIS what's in the CIP. So there's like just a big gap that it could fall through and not get addressed.
Absolutely. True. Anyone else? I don't know if I had anyone on the phone. Okay, well, this one got done a little bit early. Yep, Ms. Van Clausen, Jennifer.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just want to add that this item will be on your addendum with a resolution. Should be on your consent agenda because it needed to be, according to code, it needed to be introduced before you adopt the budget. So I think Member Johnson's intent is perhaps to take amendments to it and then not come for a vote until the first meeting in December.
I would offer the agenda could get pretty sticky depending on how budget and revenue items go. And so it could be not that we don't have time for amendments even on Tuesday, but that would be likely as well. Move forward to the December 2nd meeting, which is also a pretty packed agenda.
Yeah, I think that process would work as well, of course.
Yeah, so if we have time, but there are a ton of big items on this coming agenda, so. Mr. Johnson, you want to take us out?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My phone cut out there for a second, so I missed some of the conversation, but I think expect communication here from soon from either Ms. Van Clausen or myself on some deadlines for members who wish to add items to the project. Also note that we have the legislative committee meeting calendared for next week on, sorry to pull up here, next Wednesday, the 19th. That'll be an opportunity, hopefully to finalize any proposed, or I'm sorry, the microphones are on again. It's very distracting. Thanks. Yeah, just ask that members take this time to contemplate any amendments they might want to put forward and to have those ready for the legislative committee meeting next week on the 19th. Thanks.
Okay, anything else from the administration? Thank you all. Let's get through it. I'm grateful that we have it introduced on time. Novel. Then we'll be adjourned and we'll be back at 11:50. I guess my mic was off. We'll be adjourned and back at 11:50.